Cool.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of All Things SAP on Azure. In today's session, we have the opportunity to speak to Jacques van Scheers around a very important topic, which is availability sets and availability zones. Jacques will talk about his SAP BW environment that's sitting on Azure and the plan that he has to move this from availability sets to availability zone. It's quite an interesting topic, and we really look forward to the session that Jacques is going to be presenting to us very shortly. Before I hand over to Jacques, I would like to hand over to Diana Madenda. But before I even say that, I also want to say, together with Sambit and Prasanjit, once again, we're here to talk to you about all things SAP on Azure. Over to you, Diana, to introduce yourself. And then from there, Diana, we can hand over to Jacques to start his phenomenal presentation that we're really looking forward to.
Awesome. Thanks, Nishan. So my name is Diana Madende. I am a cloud solution architect working closely with Nishan from our Johannesburg offices at Microsoft. We specialize in SAP migrations to our Azure cloud. And happy to be having Jacques on the call. We worked very closely with him in the design and architecturing of the solution that he's going to present. Over to you, Jacques.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So I'm Jacques van Scheers. I'm a Azure Cloud Solution Architect, an engineer at Standard Bank. I work in the finance department as part of the Azure platform team. Very passionate about anything Azure, design thinking, UX, and Kubernetes, which I'm just started learning. So I'm part of the small Azure Cloud Platform team that we have, which includes Gaisang Mashile, and Kumbi Shandukani, and then myself. And basically, we build platforms on Azure to take workloads to Azure Cloud. So I'm just going to talk. I'm going to share some slides now with you guys and just take you guys through for where we are and so on. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Goran Cedric and his team and his articles that I've written, to Sasha Narings, to Nishan and Diana here, and also to Yet for their guidance and assistance on this. Okay, cool. So let's go to slide 1. So let me just share this. Let's see, share button. I had to click on it twice. I don't know why. Okay, here we go. Okay, maybe I should put this in presentation mode. Let me just see. Here's my cursor now. I've lost my cursor. Oh, there we go. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
See your screen.
Yeah, but you want to go into slideshow maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to try now. Let's see what it does. Okay, here we go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I just need to get my cursor back to my side again. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so a little bit of history. So this system that you're looking at now was originally built about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago now. Start of 2020, I think, by one of our resources with assistance from that legend Yet at Thailand from Microsoft. So myself and my cloud team, we inherited the system somewhere in April, and we look after the cloud, the Azure cloud, platform part of it. We also have a team, a SAP team that looks after the SAP and the OS side of things. It's Alna, Tilo, Henry, and Anison. And but yeah, in any case, as you can see, this is a very simple landscape. We've got 3 subnets there: an app subnet, NFS subnet, and DB subnet, and basically it's deployed onto one zone, and it's deployed in availability sets. Because at that stage we only had one zone, and in the next 3 years we got 2 more zones, which one of those zones supported the M series SKUs that we needed for the HANAs.
Jacques, just a question. So
yeah,
this is in South Africa data centers, right?
Yeah, sorry, this is SA North, or SAN as we call it, South Africa North. Yeah. Okay, cool. Any case, so I think it was it was December 2021. We had some heavy rain in South Africa, and we had a flood at one of the DCs that compromised one of the zones, and that we've got this hosted on. It only affected one of the load balancers, but that sort of pointed it out to me that we need to start looking at moving this workload from one zone from one zone to across zones, to make sure that, you know, if one zone goes down in SA North, then at least we can, you know, we can keep running our stuff on another zone, because this is a very important what do you call it, piece of software that we're running here, that we use for all kinds of metrics and reporting. So I started looking at architecture, and, you know, how to move this workload, moving it from availability sets, which we currently have, to availability zones, you know, to mitigate the zonal failure that we could have. And yeah, so I'm with the help from all these guys and the team and Diana, and I've been busy setting up the architecture and understanding what the cost is going to be, the RPO and the RTO, and I'll probably sometime in the next month or so, I'm going to present this to business and then see what they want to go with, what they feel comfortable with. Okay, cool. So let's look at the architecture. So we've got two architectures that Microsoft proposed to us. There's an active setup, and then there's an active passive setup, and we're going to go to the active next. Let's see. There we go. Okay, cool. So this is the active architecture. It is the, what do you call it, preferred architecture. I also like it, and it's preferred for a couple of reasons. Basically, your RPO is almost zero. Your RTO is zero at half performance, because remember now, and we'll go through the architecture now, that because we're running across two zones, if one zone goes down, I'm only going to have half the resources running in the other zone, so the performance will be halved. And that's why my RP at full, let me put it this way, my RTO at full performance will probably be about 30 minutes in, you know, getting the other side up and running again. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this architecture. So basically, you've got two zones there, zone 3 and zone 1, and then you've got, if you'll see also, there's some proximity groups there. It's a proximity group 1 and proximity group 2 and the other zone. And then very important to also notice here is that the DB servers or the HANAs are not in a proximity group. So there has been a lot of changes to the networks that Microsoft have done to make it faster and better. And I think it's November 2021, they proposed not to keep the DB servers in the proximity group. It also has to do with if you need to change SKUs with your VMs. It's just going to make it more difficult. Yeah, I've got a bunch of links here that I will share, and Nishan, you'll share them with the people on YouTube, eh? Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's have a look. So we've got an app subnet, we've got an NFS subnet, and we've got a DB subnet. In the app subnet, you can see we're running our application service, and then our ACCS ERS service, and our ISCCSI target service. And then we've got the NFS subnet, where we run NFS, which will later on will probably when it becomes what do you call it, AZ file shares, when that becomes GA in SA North, and is expected, I think, in this quarter, but it's not been confirmed yet. It will replace the NFS cluster setup. And then our ISCSI target service, which we use as an SBD device to ensure that we don't have concurrent access to data, that we also have an opportunity to later on use Azure fencing agent. But for now, this is the deployment architecture that I want to follow, just to keep things simple. First, just move things over to the other zone, make sure everything is running, and then we'll start doing updates to the architecture where we can. Yeah, let me just see. So that's, yeah, go for it, Diana.
I'm interrupting you. So
No, go for
just on that fencing agent, you then get rid of those VMs, right, that you have on the iSCSI ticket services. Those 3 VMs, actually, you won't need them. I think that's actually the nice thing about it.
Agree. That's it, Diana. I'm with you. So it will also make management a lot easier and less things for us to worry about. So then Azure will look after that. Correct.
Yeah.
And then let me just see my notes here. Okay, cool. Another thing that's also very important is to understand that although it says zone 3 and 1 there, you've got to check. Yes, there's some code that let me just see, where are these guys? Okay, I'm jumping around a little. Let me just rather get back to the DB HANA.
No problem. While you're
okay?
busy with that, in terms of DR, are you going to be using zone 1 as the DR as well as the HA? right?
So yes and no. So Nissan, so for the active deployment, it's basically a little bit of both, but it's more HA than DR. When we go to active passive, you'll see that it's basically a DR setup, but then across zones, not across regions.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So if we look at the top, okay, let's just go to, so we've done an NFS service, then we've got the DB servers right there at the bottom. And to ensure that, so those will run an HA across the two zones with load balance in the middle for the cluster. But yeah, if you then look at the architecture, you'll see in the top that I'm using mainly ASR from Azure to replicate my VMs over from one zone to another zone. And that's basically done to ensure that I've got the same performance that I had before, before the zonal or before the zone, what do you call it, fell away. And that's very important because I don't, we can't sort of predict what's going to happen. We don't know how long that zone might be offline. So I wanted to make sure that, my business always have the same performance, that they had beforehand from a reporting and from a batch perspective, running batch perspective. So that's why in this example here, this scenario, zone 3 has an outage, and then we move full capacity to zone 1. So you'll see there that I'm using ASR for my app service, and then also for the ACSS ERS service, and also for the iSCSI target service. And then from an NFS perspective, you can't use ASR. So there we need to just make sure that we've got snapshots, and then just restore from that snapshots as backup, and create another VM there, and then keep things running there. The reason for that is that ASR is not compatible with distributed replicated block services. So for that reason, we're gonna use just backups and snapshots. And then I know in Nissan, you also sent me an article about another tool we could use from SAP, which is called the multi-target system replication. Now, I must say it went a little bit over my head, that article, but yeah, that's something we can also look into, from an NFS perspective, until we have, the what do you call it, the opportunity to use AZ file shares, when it becomes GA and SA with a ZRS configuration. Yeah. And that's basically,
this is Sambit. Yeah, I have one question on the DB server. So we have two hot standby database server. If you can explain that a bit.
Okay, cool. So I was looking at, okay, cool. How am I going to ensure that I've got, to ensure that, well, if a zone goes down and I don't know how long that zone is going to be, out, I need to make sure, like I said, I need to have the same performance that my business were used to, make sure that I still have that performance once we fell over, or use the other zone in HA configuration. So what I looked at is using SAP HSR in async mode to have a hot standby in both. So in this example here, it should actually just show one way, but I've got it both ways, of course, because we don't know which zone is going to fall out. It could either be zone 3 or it could be zone 1. So I've got hot standbys in both zones, just in case one zone falls away with that VM, so that I have a hot standby that I can start up and join back into the cluster, and and then we've got the same performance again. Sambit, does it make sense?
Yes. Thanks, Jacques.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Sambit.
Yeah, and I have another question follow up on this.
Perfect.
So I see the synchronous mode has not been enabled, but do you see any challenge over there because it's spread across two different zones, or it is on purpose?
So what I understood from all the documentation, because remember, I haven't done this in real life yet, like you guys are. So from a documentation, I understood if you wanted to make sure you've got a hot standby, you've got to use SAP HSR in async mode, not in sync mode. So yeah, so that's for a hot standby. It's not in sync mode because it's not for HA. It's actually just to ensure that we've got a second, what do you call it, hot standby VM in case the other zone falls away.
Understood.
Cool,
thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man. Awesome. Okay, cool. Any other questions, team?
Not from my side, no.
Good.
Cool. I'm just going through
maybe
notes.
one question regarding the backup. So how are you covering the backup of the application layer as well as the database layer?
Okay, so from that perspective, we are doing, of course, backups, and we also have it geo distributed as well. So we've got backups, GRS, I think it's GRS RA. We've got backups made in. We've got a copy on one of the zones, and then another 3 copies on another zone, and 3 copies in SA West, which is another region we've got in Cape Town, which is about 1,400 kilometers from here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are you aware that there is a new feature now that is being supported by Azure Backup called Cross Region Restore, CRR?
No, I'm not.
So that probably you can also leverage, because that will give you another another level of protection in case your primary region is not available. Then you still be able to put up your system in the paired region. I'm not sure which is your paired region for this. Yeah. So there you will be able to launch your application, mainly the database or the application server, depending on which region you choose as a pair region or the target region.
Okay. No, I'm with you, Sanjit. But we are looking at. We're not really looking at DR yet from an SA West perspective. From my understanding, that SA West doesn't support the M series. What do you call it? VMs yet, if I've got that right. Yeah. So that's our pair region, SA West. And also, yeah, but that might be something we could look into the future. But I just need to check that again. I think the last time I checked, it wasn't supported yet, but it might be now. You know, things move fast on Azure, right? So that's why it's a mission to keep up with Azure.
So a good point. So things do move fast in Azure. Just yesterday, we've also released a publicly available feature, by the way, something called CSR, which is cross-subscription restore. Which allows you to restore pretty much VMs and even disks across from one subscription to another. So let me explain the use case around this, right? So in the SAP landscape, from time to time, you may want to restore a VM from one subscription to another if you have 2 different subscriptions. Like, for example, you may have a production subscription where your production resources are sitting. And then you also have a non-production subscription where your non-production resources are sitting. So if you need to have this requirement of refreshing your production system from non-production with new test data, for testing and stuff like that, then you could use this new feature CSR to restore the VMs attached with the disks across, and then obviously follow. It comes with a restore point as well, right? So when you do the restore, you can attach to the latest restore point, which is the backups for those disks and these VMs, and then you can quickly bring up the VM on the other side with, and then obviously follow the SAP process to bring up the SAP instance. So it's also another nice feature. It's called CSR, cross-subscription restore, right? So just something, I just needed to make a comment. That's a new feature.
No, that's pretty cool. That's very cool. I just also, I just want to make sure I got his name right. Sanjit, eh? Because I think I got it wrong.
Prasanjit. It's fine.
Prasanjit, sorry. I thought so. Prasanjit. Sorry, man. Prasanjit, the other thing is also cost, so basically I think just moving to HA first is gonna improve our availability a lot. We're going from 99.95 to 99.99% from a VM perspective, on an SLA perspective. So I think that's going to improve things a lot for us already. And that's one of the things that I'm scared of the last year or so. I'm a bit worried about, if we get a flood or some other, I don't know, thing that happens, that if we do have issues with that one zone and it's DCs, that that we're going to run into trouble. So that's why I want to just make sure that we've got a HA across zones at the moment, and our architecture forums and all those guys, they're also very happy with us to at least have high availability across 2 zones. Yeah, so I think that's for now is very important. So maybe at a later stage we can actually look at when the VMs do become available in SA West, South Africa West region, which is our pair region. If that becomes available, we can go and look at cost and also again at risk and make look at a calculation if it's worth it to move to SA West. It's a difficult thing because you're like, why would 2 zones fall away in SA North? Like would it be a meteor strike or something bad that happens? Who knows? I mean, it's difficult to understand what the risk is, and you need to understand what the risk is to understand, if it's worth it to implement a certain architecture. We always need to look at that, and of course cost, yeah. Cool. Okay, just one more thing. One of the things that you also need to do before you well, there's 2 things that are very important. You need to make sure that whichever zone you're going to select to move from availability set, on your BW system to availability zones, the most important thing is to understand which zone will also be in your region will be compatible, will have the M series VMs, available. So like I said, in ours, of the 3 zones we have in South Africa North, we only have 2 zones that have the M series available. Then the next thing you need to do is you need to also check what your latency, what your what do you call it? Is it? I'm confused now. Is it latency? Yeah, our latency is between the different zones, because you have to remember, because between the application servers and between application, very important, and the database, especially with the HANA databases, if you have bad latency there, it's gonna have a significant impact on your performance. So that's very important. And then what we did is we ran, see, where's my notes here? Okay, cool. So what we did is we ran a script that Kimmo Force, I think he's also from Sweden, and Philip Leitenbauer, they've got a script that you can run to check the latency between all 3 or all your zones. I mean, all your zones, and then you can select 2 zones that you have your M series available, and then check what your latency is going to be. So in our case, our latency between the 2 zones that we can use. Go for it, Diana.
Nishan, or just checking Nishan?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, he's back.
Okay, cool, awesome. Thanks, Diana. Okay, cool. So from a latency perspective, you need to check that, and it will also tell you what the zones or the DC names are that are grouped together. So in our case, it's JNB20 and JNB22, and we did run the script with help from Sasha Narinks, and the round trip between the zones was 389 and plus 388, which comes together at 0.77 milliseconds, which is, if you follow the SAP note, SAP note 1100926, where they will tell you what the thresholds are, to give you an indication of possible network performance. So a good value from SAP, from a round trip perspective between your zones, below 0.3 milliseconds is a good. Moderate values between 0.3 milliseconds and 0.7 seconds. And then below average value is a round trip of bigger than 0.7 milliseconds. Now in our case, it's 0.777 milliseconds, which is then a below average value. And for that reason, if you go to, there's another link that I will share with Nishan as well, where Microsoft then advises, specifically SA North, the SA North region to rather go with an active passive architecture, not an active, what do you call it, a solution. But Microsoft's working really hard. They've done some significant improvements of latency between the zones in the last year and a half. And I'm very positive that within the next year and a half, I think we'll probably see a significant improvement on that latency. And then we'll probably be able to go for an active architecture, maybe within the next year or so. So I'm holding my thumbs for that one, because I like the active architecture. So with that, I think we've spoken enough about the active architecture. Let's move to the active passive architecture. Okay, wait a second. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong screen here. Here we go. Let me just get my cursor back. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Okay, so this is, as you can see, it's high availability, but it's actually more of a DR setup, because you've got all your active VMs running on the left side on zone 3, and then you've got nothing really running on zone 1 on the other zone, except for your of course for your hot standby for the SAP HANAs. Yeah, and you can see there that we use ASR for the application service and the ERS service and the iSCSI target service to ASR and over to the other side. And then, of course, like I said, for NFS service, we're using backup and restore. And you can see there that the estimated, it's not tested yet, but the estimated RPO there will be about 30 minutes. And then the RTO will probably be beyond 20 minutes, you know, to move everything over to the other side, get it up and running and synced, and then we're in business again. The other thing that's also very important with this architecture is if zone 3 goes down, you know, everybody in South Africa, some of really big organizations in South Africa will probably also move to zone 1. And then there's the question of capacity. So will we have capacity to start up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, what do you call it? Well, let's say 7, 8 VMs in zone 1. And that is something that you can, that risk that you've got there, that you might not have capacity to start those VMs up because everybody else has moved from zone 3 to zone 1 is capacity reservations. So capacity reservations.
Jacques, I have one input. Have you heard about reserved capacity?
No, I know about reserved capacity, but that's more expensive than capacity reservations.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have reserved. Yeah. To save cost, we have reserved what do you call it, capacity on, or maybe it's the same thing. Did I say it wrong? Maybe.
No, reserved capacity is
Are you talking of reserved instances or?
No, reserved capacity.
Talking of the same thing.
Yeah, reserved capacity is something that you get assurance that if something goes wrong with your availability zone 3, you still have the possibility, or you will get prioritized for getting your instances back in availability zone 1.
Yeah,
and
cool.
reserved,
sorry, go for it. Sorry.
And reserved instance pricing is a commercial, I would say, offering from Microsoft that which gives you a heavier discount, right? If you do certain commitment, either 1 year, 3 year. But one thing which I also need to check out whether reserved capacity including M series or not, because so far until last year, it was including the lower side of the VMs. But we have a plan to include also in the M series maybe coming year. But with that, customer who are, as you said rightly, that probably if all customer moves into zone 1, then it depends on when you have moved, whether you have moved first or when you have moved last, depending on the timing, you will get the resource, right? So reserved capacity can solve that problem, but of course you need to pay for that.
Yeah. But sorry, we're talking about the same thing. I'm just saying capacity reservations and you're saying reserved capacity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. So we've got reservations, like you said, which is a commercial thing across all our VMs to save cost, and it's a huge cost saving, especially on the M series. It's about between 60 and 70% or something cost saving there. But from a capacity reservation perspective, yes, we will use it for most of the VMs here, except the M series. That's not available yet, but we don't really need it for the M series because we're going to have a hot standby in any case. But maybe for the second VM that we need, we'll probably need that. But yeah, so hopefully if Microsoft gets that to us next year, then that might also be an option for us. Cool. Thanks, man.
So can I ask one question? So I have seen this architecture. These are really great. And I assume that you have migrated your landscape or you have started a greenfield implementation over in Azure.
No. I'm only in the planning stage. So I've got all the information now. I'm going to present it to business, and then business will make a decision on what they feel comfortable with from a risk perspective and a cost perspective. And then once they've made a decision, we'll start looking at how we'll move it over.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jacques.
Cool. No worries, man. Like I said, I don't have experience in building this yet, so that's something I'm looking forward to. Yeah. So yeah, basically,
the nice thing, Jacques, is you've got all the support you need, especially even from Goran's blog. He mentions quite a lot of automated scripts that you can actually use for the move. So that's going to be very, very helpful once you get to that.
No, definitely, and I'll definitely ask you guys for support as well, because it would be great to just have somebody on the side who's done this a couple of times, you know.
For sure.
Happy to support
so,
you, Jacques. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. No, definitely going to need you on that one. It's going to be a biggie. But yeah, just to bring it back to the approach, you've got a homogeneous approach where you basically build a new infrastructure. And that can take a long time. I mean, between 6 and 8 months, and it incurs a significant cost. And it's basically a duplication of your production environment. So that's the one approach. And then the second approach is what you were talking about, Diana, is that using Goran Gondrek's and his team's, what do you call it, scripts, which basically move all the resources from availability sets to availability zones. So yeah, I think Nishan will also share that link with you, with the audience, and yeah, that's like you said, it's a proven way, to move the SAP setup from AV sets to zones using scripts. It reduces the migration time from months to literally minutes and hours, I've heard. There's no need for post configuration activities, which is also great. There's some significant less effort and cost involved. So from a costing perspective, we literally take what we have now and we just move it with these scripts. We can do it over the weekend. And there's no disruption to the connectors or on-prem firewall rules, which is also a blessing. Because we basically, like, your subnets, they span zones. So basically it's just using the scripts to re-implement sort of the VMs into those zones. But the subnets stay the same. You're going to still work in the same subnet and in the same VNet. So there's no disruption to any connectors, on-prem firewall rules, and also I think from connecting back to the hub there, from an AZ firewall perspective, there's no changes there. Let me just think. There's just maybe just one thing that's a bit of a risk. It's a performance risk. That's the only thing, because this is it's almost a fire and forget approach, because you move your stuff over and then you don't know what type of performance you're going to expect. So we know we've got that SAP note that tells us your network performance will be like this depending on the latency. But you will only, the proof is in the pudding. You'll only know once you've moved it over what your performance is going to look like. And I think that's very important then, that we've got a good understanding, or let me put it this way, that we've got a good latency between those zones before we actually pull the trigger on moving it from availability sets to availability zones using those scripts from Goran. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just reminded me actually, Jacques. I think also, just from a testing perspective, because this is you're planning on doing this on your productive environment.
Yes.
And that's why we were recommending that you set up a test environment, do all that testing, performance testing, rather on a test environment. And then, you can always replicate that once you're comfortable and happy to move over to production.
No, definitely. I see.
Definitely highly recommended.
Yeah. No, I agree. I see Goran also advises to do that, and we'll definitely do that. We'll set up a test environment and then use the scripts, see if everything goes well, see if there's any pain points that we need to alleviate, and then also, like you said, do some performance measurables on the batch and reporting functionality, and then we've got enough confidence to actually take production over to zones. I'm with you. Yeah. Team, I think that's all from my side, eh? I don't know if there's any more questions or comments.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Exceptional presentation. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you as well, team. Thank you for all your input and assistance on this as well. I'm going to call on all of you when we actually do this. Eh?
You're very welcome. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, team.
With that was Jacques van Scheers from Standard Bank, sharing his valuable insights on moving from availability sets to availability zones. So thank you very much, Jacques, for that valuable insight. I think this was very detailed and well prepared. We appreciate you sharing this with us. And we have come to the end of the session. So I just want to wish you all a nice Friday afternoon moving forward, and an awesome weekend. So all the best and see you soon. Cheers. And that's the end of episode 6.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.